It was supposed to be just another ordinary afternoon. John had gone out for drinks with his friends, something he did every so often to unwind. We both needed our space sometimes, and I never minded when he did his thing. But I had my own plans that day too. I was getting ready to meet an old friend. It had been so long since we'd seen each other, and I was looking forward to the evening. A little distraction, something fun. It wasn't anything crazy, just a dinner, some laughs. Still, there was something about the way I was getting dressed that day. Like I was trying to impress someone. And in a way, I was. I'd been feeling lost lately. Like I wasn't seen anymore. Like I wasn't me anymore. And when you start feeling that way, sometimes you look for attention in places you shouldn't. I slipped on the dress, one I hadn't worn in ages. It was simple, black, form-fitting. The kind of dress that made me feel, I don't know, alive. It wasn't for John. He hadn't even asked me what I was doing tonight. But the moment I looked in the mirror, I realized I was trying to feel something. Anything. I was fixing my hair when I heard the door open. It was strange, actually, how quiet everything had been. Almost too quiet. Maybe it was the creak of the floorboards or the way the air felt heavier. But I just had this strange feeling like I was being watched. And then I saw him, standing there in the doorway. Jake, my stepson. He wasn't a kid anymore. No longer the little boy I'd helped raise. He was a man now, in his mid-20s, and that day, for some reason, it felt like the world had shifted. His presence in the doorway felt different. It wasn't just a quick hello or a hey mom like it used to be. He stood there, still, like he was waiting for something. Like he was seeing me in a way he never had before. I froze. I didn't know what to say. I mean, how could I? Here I was, standing in front of my stepson in a dress that I knew wasn't meant for just anyone, with an awkward silence filling the space between us. "Are you okay?" I said, trying to break the tension, forcing a smile. "Need something?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me. And then, in the most casual way, he said, "You look beautiful, Deborah." It was just a simple compliment. But it felt like a punch to the gut. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to admit to myself. I liked it. I mean, why wouldn't I? I hadn't felt desired in so long. Not really. Not by John, anyway. He was great, don't get me wrong, but we'd fallen into this routine. This comfortable, predictable life. But Jake? Jake still saw me somehow. And in that one look, I felt something stir inside me that I hadn't felt in years. I should have told him to leave. Told him it was inappropriate, made some excuse. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot, unable to tear my eyes away from his. He finally broke the silence, shrugging. "You know, I should have knocked," he said, a little nervous now. "But, I just didn't expect to see you like that. I mean, you look great." I nodded, trying to laugh it off, but inside my heart was pounding. Was this really happening? Was I really standing here, my stepson staring at me like that, and I was enjoying it? I cleared my throat, feeling the flush on my cheeks. "I'm just getting ready to go out, Jake. It's nothing." Right. I'll let you get back to it," he said quickly, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. The way he glanced at me once more before backing out of the room. But I didn't move. I didn't even feel the impulse to go after him and correct myself. Instead, I stood there, staring at the door as it closed behind him, my mind racing. The rest of the evening was a blur. I went out with my friend, tried to enjoy myself, but all I could think about was Jake. His words, the way he looked at me. That strange, electric feeling I hadn't had in years. I couldn't tell you what happened next. I couldn't even explain it to myself. But what I can tell you is that after that night, nothing was the same. Jake and I didn't talk about it. We acted like nothing had happened, but I couldn't get it out of my head. That moment, that connection, however brief, had changed something inside me. I started noticing him in ways I shouldn't have. The way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, it was different. And I was different too. I told myself I wouldn't let it go any further, that it was just a moment, that it was just the loneliness talking. But the truth was, I had crossed a line I never thought I would. And now, I had to live with it. It didn't end with Jake. It ended with me. It ended with a mistake I could never take back. Because the real betrayal wasn't the physical one. It was the emotional one. The fact that I'd let myself be seen for the first time in a long time by someone who wasn't my husband. And that's something I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for. Days passed, and that moment kept haunting me. At first, I told myself, I made a mistake, but it should stay in the past. But a mistake sometimes is just the beginning, isn't it? That day, that moment, that look, it didn't leave me. The emptiness inside me grew bigger, each day a little more than the last. I kept telling myself everything was fine, but deep down I knew it wasn't. John and I were fine. Nothing had changed on the surface, but I had changed. It wasn't obvious at first. We went through our daily routine, like we always did. But that small crack in my heart, the one I'd ignored for so long, had been exposed. And there was no going back. I couldn't pretend I didn't feel it anymore. The longing, the emptiness. Jake was on my mind constantly. I tried to push it away. I tried to focus on John, on the life we built together. But it was hard when you've spent years with someone and suddenly realize that something's missing. I didn't know what I was searching for, but whatever it was, Jake seemed to be the one who filled that space. It wasn't something I could admit to anyone, not even to myself, really. A week passed. John went out again to hang out with his friends, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I told myself I'd keep my distance from Jake, that I would never let things go any further. But sometimes things happen when you least expect it. It was another quiet evening when Jake and I found ourselves in the living room alone. It wasn't planned, but somehow it felt inevitable. I heard the door to his room open, and for some reason, I knew this moment was coming. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like everything was about to change. I was paralyzed, like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if I was strong enough to resist. Jake stepped into the living room, his presence filling the space between us. I tried to act normal, tried to focus on the book I was pretending to read, but I couldn't shake the tension in the air. It was different this time. More charged, more real. The silence between us felt thick, like we were both waiting for something to happen. But what? Deborah, he said, his voice softer than usual. He hesitated, his eyes flickering over me. You look beautiful, really. Everything okay? The way he said it, the way his gaze lingered, it hit me in a way it shouldn't have. Beautiful. It felt like an echo of the past, a reminder of a part of myself I'd forgotten. I smiled weakly, my heart racing in my chest, trying to play it off.